This is the Know Your Law series by Barefoot Law, a non-profit organization which uses digital innovation and technology to provide free legal information and guidance for all. For more information, visit www.barefootlaw.org.
I'd like to welcome each one of you individually. Today's topic, what we're speaking about, is gender-based violence. I want to just move right into a question for Jonathan, because I think now we're looking at what are the ways in which the victims can look for a legal response in the formal system, in the formal justice sector.
Thank you so much, Phoebe, and the rest of the other panelists. You may realize that this panel is not gender sensitive, I being the only male panelist, but I am not sure that whether that was deliberately done. But to answer your question, what the public needs to know, I think it's important to begin from a point that all violence, including those that are least attended to, is crime and can be reported. I listened to Penny when she was taking us through the list of GBVs, and you realize that in our community, generally psychosocial violence and intimate partner violence are most of the time ignored because society have come to embrace them as though they are normal occurrences. And then you also realize that we have a number of culturally acceptable GBVs, like communities that practice FGM, child marriages, and wife inheritance. So it doesn't matter. Once GBV occurs, it has to be reported as a crime. And of course, Penny, Phoebe, you realize that it is easier to say reporting, but I know that reporting is such a hard thing because many victims, especially women, are not comfortable reporting either because they think their complaints will not be seriously attended to, or because they fear to be stigmatized, or because they fear to lose this homestead that has given them shelter, or they fear to lose that job, or any other form of retaliation that they think they will face when they report. So, but at the point of occurrence, it is expected that that crime should be reported as soon as it is as it occurs, for the obvious reason that that helps in getting credible evidence for purposes of prosecution. Now, most GBVs occur in homesteads or closed communities. So in most cases, the first point of reporting is either the head of the family, if he's not the perpetrator, or that responsible relative or close person that the victim lives with, or the local council committee members. It is these people that normally refer victims that report to them, those that have not reported directly to police. But I think, to give justice to your question, I will labor much as to what happened after reporting to police. When a matter is reported to police, a formal complaint is entered in what we call the station diary. Once a formal complaint is entered in the station diary, then the file is allocated to a specific officer. Now, the practice in most police stations, and I think that is what it should be, is that there is a GBV desk officers that are specially trained to deal with gender-based violence. And as soon as that specific complaint is allocated, then that officer commences the process of interviewing and statement recording. Interviewing is important because then you have to listen to what the victim has to say. You have to interview the victim in order to know the details of what occurred. And the moment those are established, then those narrations are deduced into writing. And that is what we call a police statement. So the public needs to know that it doesn't just end at ringing the police or raising a red flag. There must be an extra step to be taken to deduce the specific occurrences into in form of a statement. And once a statement is recorded, or after statement is recorded, then the victim may be asked to mention other witnesses other than herself or other exhibits. For example, in cases of rape, a victim may be required to lead police to the recovery of that torn blouse or the torn panty, or something that can help to corroborate. Although I am aware that corroboration is no longer required, but where we have it, then it is the best that we should go for. So after recording statements of the witnesses and recovery of exhibits, then the victim may be required to attend medical examination. Now, this is another stage that is obviously not liked by many victims because they do not want to be re-traumatized. But we are in an adversarial system where everything has to be proved by evidence. And the best evidence normally to corroborate the victim's story is medical evidence. If it is assault, then the doctor must confirm that indeed somebody was assaulted and injured. If it is a rape, a lot of processes take place, either confirmation of injuries that can be a sign of resistance, or extraction of other scientific samples, like the swabs that may be submitted for further analysis to strengthen the allegation of the victim. And that can be very, very helpful in court. So the victim need to know that normally when they report, in most cases, the police will send them for medical examination on a police form that is commonly known as police form 3. And then once all that is done, victim has recorded her story, the witnesses have given their side of the story, exhibits have been recovered, medical examination is done, then the file is complete. And once the file is complete, that is when that file is submitted for the perusal by the Director of Public Prosecutions. Now, the director either acts by herself or through agents, and you find these agents all over the country. Almost in every district, you will find an office representing the Director of Public Prosecutions, and there are officers there. Most of them are lawyers that will look at those files and determine whether what police has done is sufficient or whether police should do more for purposes of court prosecutions. But where we agree that what we have on the file is sufficient to warrant charging the perpetrator, then the perpetrator is charged to court. And thereafter, the victim now is expected to be called upon at the appropriate time when that case is scheduled for hearing, to appear in court, either by herself or together with other witnesses and or exhibits as the case may require, so that the victim can now testify in court. Now, presently, the practice in court is convenient for victims of gender-based violence. Although it remains largely adversarial, but there is some reasonable degree of privacy that we accord victims. For example, in most cases, we don't require them to testify in open court. We don't require them to necessarily face their perpetrators. We do not, where need be, they do not disclose their actual names. They do not need to testify in open court in the presence of the press for purposes of protecting their privacy and for their own comfort, so that they can be comfortable to narrate the ordeal that they went through. And it is at that stage that the victim will have an opportunity to physically meet with the prosecutor to prepare for the court process. So pretty much the process is similar to any other process for reporting any criminal offense. What is unique is the sensitivity that is required to be accorded to victims of gender-based violence, because we know, and now the police recognizes, the prosecutors recognize, and even the courts too recognize that these are cases that require a lot of sensitivity and privacy for the protection of the victims. So briefly, that is what I can walk you through in case such a crime occurred. I believe that those are the steps that one should expect to go through.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I think I saw that in live action. I was watching the process literally as you took us through it. So that's an incredible overview of exactly what happens. I go straight now to Ms. Prima. What are the most significant hurdles that you see for specifically women, because you represent women? What are those significant hurdles that you find that women will face while seeking justice in relation to gender-based violence?
Thank you, Phoebe. It's such an honor to be speaking with the panel. It's a very rich panel to be here speaking about prosecutors, and my brother is here representing from the other side of government, and listening to Tina, my sister in the feminist movement, and Penny. I wanted to also add that violence is not just physical and psychological, as we were speaking, but also is meted out through institutionally. The institution of, it could be the Uganda police, the office of the DPP, the judiciary, our homes and culture. The violence can be institutional in that sense. Violence can also be systemic through the systems, the various procedures that Jonathan has been sharing about. The system. This is how you're supposed to go about it. This is the police form. I don't know if some of us have had the chance to look at the police form. The police form even has visuals of how a woman should look like, and how violence, if it's sexual violence, how it should be, and if we should see tears in the vaginal area, and the police doctor ought to be indicating those parts. So, I don't want to say what Nachambade was saying the other day, Jamempali, you must remove it. And for that, for so many women, is very violent. Violence is also reflected in our laws and policies. You may all be reminded that our history and culture and laws are from colonialism. They come from a history of oppression and racism. These are laws that were subjected to us by the British that came in. This is not how we were solving violence issues in the past. Our culture and traditions had a way of dealing with some of these offenses, which is not reflected in the law. Now, the white man's law that we're currently practicing and enforcing on our communities is something that came on boats. imported to us, and therefore women and men too are being subjected to this colonial, oppressive, racist, and something we should be discussing. I had Penny speaking about the fact that marital rape is not recognized in our laws. Yeah, the colonialists could rape our women and not be subjected to the same. And therefore it wasn't a criminal. In the past, if you go into our traditions and culture, marital rape was a real offense that had to, clan meetings had to be held and such things had to be solved. The perpetrators would be punished even when the wife is rightfully theirs. So aside from the physical, the psychological, systemic, legal, I was also looking at the media and how the media is shaping narratives around violence. Usually when we say GBV or SGBV, we are talking, people quickly start thinking about domestic violence or sexual violence, but we're also looking at the language. When you say Prima is speaking for the victims, my clients don't like being called victims. They have survived the experience. So we call them survivors and victors from this experience. So when you start calling them victims, it's a kind of narrative that they are not comfortable associating with. Rather, they would rather be called survivors or victors from the experiences they've gone. The hurdles through these systems, the laws and institutions, some Jonathan and Penny mentioned or touched on, but I'd like to mention the issue of victim blaming. Of you walk into a police station and quickly the police looks at you and says, how are you dressed? Should you be speaking to me dressed like that? Is that even an offense? I get women, we have a toll-free line in our office. Women can call in to report cases, or even we encourage women that if you go to a police station and the police refuses to record your case, call this number. They will call us and say, I went to the police station. And when I met the police lady, there's a child and family protection unit at police. Usually in the villages, they are called mama police. It's usually a woman. When you're taken to mama police and you're coming from a family, maybe everyone knows that your husband loves you and provides for you, and you have a complaint that my husband slapped me. Mama police is the one to say, look at how you're dressed. You have good shoes. You have a smartphone. Shouldn't you be lucky that your husband is taking care of you? Why did he slap you? I took long to take hot water for him to have a bath. Mama police starts lecturing you about how you should behave to avoid being slapped. Now, realize that mama police in this case is blaming the survivor of the violence as opposed to recording the offense and following up with the perpetrator. This is happening at police, an institution set up by government to fight violence in our community. The question of shaming women that rape, shaming women that report issues of violence, or you should be embarrassed that you're claiming that your husband can rape you. How can you even say something like that? Again, yesterday I was speaking to the media, and the media was sharing with me of how some of them, when they get into relationships and their photos in privacy are leaked to other people, those women are shamed. Several media presenters, especially female presenters whose nude pictures have leaked, have been fired by the media institutions. When something like that happens in the case of a man, when men's pictures or men are seen in videos having sexual relationships with women, they are celebrated. The media houses will defend them. They have jobs. I was giving an example on one of my social media pages that some time back, there's a radio presenter in this country who had sex on TV, and very many people watched in the Big Brother house. When he came back, he was welcomed with a convoy, presented to the president. People were suggesting that he should run for presidency. We celebrated that man that had sex on TV. We saw him. The evidence is there. Jonathan can start the prosecution process. But we celebrated that man. When a female artist's private videos having sex leaked, she was summoned by the Minister for Ethics. Very quickly, we had an anti-pornography committee. The law was being used against this female artist. She lost her job on the TV station. She all of a sudden had police and prosecutors calling her for interviews so they can look for crimes to charge her with. When you're talking about cyber harassment, it is very easy. My brother Jonathan was the one in charge of Dr. Stella Nyanzi's fight. He was up in arms, denying her bail to leave the prison walls. She was criminalized with that issue of cyber harassment for what she did. The young man, Brian Isiko, not from SOFA, did something very similar against an honorable member of parliament. She went and filed a case. The young man pleaded guilty and was put in prison. A few days later, the media curated this story as a young man was sending love messages to a woman. We are now being criminalized for sending love messages to women. The MP was in tears. She was crying and saying, this boy is harassing me. This boy is sending me endless messages. The evidence was clear and on the court record. But the media continuously hounded this MP. She lost her place in parliament. She's not in parliament anymore because her electorate said, we didn't send you to go and use your power against young men. You know, her case of cyber harassment was dressed as love messages. Unfortunately, you know, you will see Dr. Stella Nyanzi spent 2 years in jail. This young man barely spent a month there because there was a men's association that quickly looked for money, got him out, got appealed. They had the media against this honorable MP. Even with her power and position in society, she could not fight it. The system, the law, you know, the media was against her and she could not find justice. I also wanted to talk about the long court processes. They can be traumatizing for our clients. Aside from the process of collecting the evidence, I remember very clearly during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, especially the first lockdown when we got into this and everyone was locked up. We didn't know what to do. This was the first time this is happening in our time and people, you know, there was a very big surge in violence cases in our communities. Police was arresting people left, right, and center. Sexual violence, there was like quadruple case reports of sexual violence in communities. Phoebe and everyone on this phone, I can tell you that our phones in office were also beeping every other time. Luckily, we managed to get a pass to be able to work during the time. We were receiving calls from across the country. Police cells were full. The police would call us and say, okay, fine, that person has been raped. The perpetrator is here. We have arrested, but we have nowhere to take them. We have nowhere to take them. Test kits in the first lockdown were such a rare material, and so many health workers in the country did not know how to test for COVID. So policemen were also skeptical about getting perpetrators and putting them in jail. They had nowhere to put them. And the other issue was collecting the evidence. You know, the police form 3, which as lawyers usually call PF3, the police doctors or health workers accredited to fill these forms. I need to add that not every health worker can fill it. There's specific health workers qualified and appointed by police in every district to be able to do this. Now, if you know that most districts in Uganda don't even have a doctor. So what the police does is say that the doctor will come around on Thursday. So if you come and report your case on Monday, if you say I have been raped, you're going to be kept in custody till the doctor comes around. You have come to report a case, but now you have to also be kept. You are not going to bathe until the doctor sees you. So it could take days to weeks. No woman wants to go without a bath for more than 2 days. So if the doctor doesn't come, you then go home, traumatized, you've not had a bath, you've been humiliated, shamed at the police station, but the system has failed you. That is violence. And also the absence of witness protection mechanisms. We have talked about and advocated for a witness protection law. You come, report a case, but you're reporting a member of parliament, or you're reporting a big person. Men have money, men are strong. My sister Tina was mentioning that resources are in the arms of men. They're the ones with the land in our society. They're the ones with the guns. They're the ones with the shops. The women are just laborers culturally and traditionally. We don't, well, the situation lately is changing. But the women that are reporting these cases are reporting cases against powers that be. So they need protection. I usually give an example of the case of Uganda v. Besigye, which involved the lady Chakua. When Chakua reported her rape case against Dr. Kiza Besigye, she had state protection. She was supported and transported to police every other time. I have even read that she was given a business by government. So should you lose your job while trying to pursue justice, is there a way that the government will caution you from the shocks that come with following up your case? That doesn't happen. It happened for this particular lady, but doesn't always happen for all the other women. I don't have time. I still have to go to work. I can't be in court and spend the whole day. No boss is going to understand that you're actually following up something that happened to you, and therefore you should be cautioned in this way. Not very many have that kind of privilege. So the government needs to think about witness protection, the mental pain and torture. I cannot re-emphasize the same. And lastly, something we always talk about, corruption and professionalism among state entities, especially state attorneys, sadly. Every time my heart breaks to go, and I know I'm following up a case, and this is a colleague. Last year, I was really sad. I had to make some noise in the DPP's office, but also the Judicial Service Commission. A 6-year-old girl was defiled in Gulu by a 30-year-old man. There was evidence. The parents of this young girl followed up the case, the medical, the file was ready. And somehow the state attorney amended the charge from aggravated defilement to, no, it wasn't simple defilement. It was a very simple charge of something like invasion of privacy, something like that. And they gave the man a caution and set him free. When the file came to my desk, I said, no, which law school did this state attorney go to? We had to write to the area DPP to say, no, this cannot happen. The man needs to be rearrested, fresh investigation issue, and the case must be prosecuted. Unfortunately, by that time, the man had already fled from Gulu. We don't know if he's in the country by now. But I am happy to report that the Judicial Service Commission took on the magistrate and the state attorney. They have since been interdicted. And yeah, but this doesn't always happen. There's not so many of us around willing to take on our colleagues to that extent.
Thank you, Prima. Oh my God, yes. This was such a sobering session because I think what we were looking at before that seemed very theoretical. We're still talking about what the framework looks like, and what you've done is you've brought it into reality.